I just feel with Eze, you just feel that he's got that special ingredient in him to play a pass, to score a goal, to do something different.
Eberechi Eze isn't just an Arsenal signing, he's becoming Arteta's emergency key.
He's done well in around Papsar. Eze must be, and it is!
Because here's the strange part. Since arriving in August 2025, Eze has looked like the kind of player who changes the temperature of matches. Yet he started only 14 league games this season. And when he does play, the pattern is hard to ignore. Against Manchester City in September, with Arsenal trailing, it was Eze's composure and final pass that created the late equaliser. In the Champions League, he's delivered decisive assists in high-pressure games. In domestic cups, he's quietly added goals and control. And then there's the North London derby, a hat-trick in the first meeting, a brace in the second. 5 goals in 2 league games against Spurs, equaling Henry and Van Persie in Arsenal's history books. But here's the real question. If a player can reach those heights, why has Arteta hesitated to fully trust him? This is why Eze's presence might be the difference between Arsenal controlling games and Arsenal winning the league.
It's exciting for me. It's where I want to be. It's what I want to be doing.
Eberechi Eze is outstanding. Yet he's never felt fully owned by Arteta's team sheet. That's the contradiction that has defined Arsenal's 2025/26 season. Because on paper, this was meant to be a perfect reunion story. As Gines in August 2025 comes back to North London, and Arsenal add a Premier League proven creator who can play between the lines, carry the ball under pressure, and win games with one moment of invention. And for a while, it looked exactly like that. In the early months, Eze didn't need weeks to announce himself. The first thing Arsenal fans noticed wasn't even the goals, it was the feel. With Eze on the pitch, Arsenal's attacks didn't just circulate, they breathed. Possession had a second tempo. The ball didn't always go wide and come back. Sometimes it went through teams. You could see why Arteta wanted him. Eze gives you the rare combo Arsenal don't always have in the same player. Secure receiving under pressure, half-turn, protect, escape ball carrying that commits defenders, and the final action, the slip pass, the disguised reverse, the clipped ball into the blind side. And that's where the paradox begins. When Eze plays, he changes Arsenal. But when Arteta sets up his best 11 for control, Eze is often the player who waits. By late February, the story around him had hardened into a frustrating headline. Only 14 Premier League starts this season, a prolonged stretch where he wasn't completing 90 minutes regularly after late November. Often used as the solution, not always the plan. So fans argue in 2 directions at once. Side A says, he's been exceptional, play him. Side B says, he doesn't fit Arteta's structure, that's why he's in and out. And the reason this debate gets loud is simple. Arsenal under Arteta are a system team, a structure team, a control team. Eze is not chaotic, but he's expressive. He wants to feel the game. He wants to roam into pockets. He wants to drop deeper when the space is blocked. He wants to hunt the ball. That freedom is the gift and also the risk inside Arteta's model. To understand why Eze can look like a match winner one week and a why didn't he start mystery the next, you have to understand what Arteta is actually buying with his system. Arteta doesn't chase pretty football for its own sake. He chases something more ruthless. Control first, chaos second. If Arsenal control the map of the game, where the ball goes, where the counter-attack is allowed to happen, where the opponent is forced to defend, the goals eventually arrive. So the system is built around a few non-negotiables. First, positional play. This is Arsenal's core language. Occupy zones, create triangles, overload one side, then switch to the weak side. In plain terms, you don't run wherever. You stand in the right place so the next pass is guaranteed, so the next player can face forward, so the opponent's midfield gets stretched. That's why Arsenal value players who hold width at the right time, attack half spaces at the right time, and don't abandon zones just because they want the ball. Second, zone occupation. Arteta wants Arsenal to always have a presence wide to stretch, in the half space to threaten the channel, and between the lines to connect phases. Eze loves the half space. He also loves the find me wherever there's oxygen approach, and that's where friction can occur. His instinct to drift and receive can clash with Arsenal's need for fixed reference points. Match analysis describe this exact tension, that Eze's preference to drop deeper to find space can clash with the runs and spacing around him, including Declan Rice's movements. Third, rest defence stability. Here's the part casual viewers miss. Arsenal's attacking structure is also their defensive security system. When Arsenal attack, they're already thinking about the counter. Arteta wants a stable shape behind the ball, usually 2 or 3 players positioned to stop. The break wins second balls and keep the opponent boxed in. So if one attacker loses the ball cheaply or fails to react instantly, the rest defence gets stressed and Arsenal's control is gone. That's why Arteta can bench even talented players if the off-ball work isn't right. And it's why Eze's selection isn't just about creativity. It's also about, can we lose the ball with him on the pitch and still be safe? Coverage points to moments like the Aston Villa game where Eze was criticised for not tracking a run, and how that kind of detail matters in Arteta's highly tuned system. Fourth, tempo control through midfield circulation. Arteta's Arsenal don't want to play like a street fight. They want to play like a chess clock. Slow it down to move the opponent, speed it up to hurt them, then slow it down again to suffocate the response. That's why Arsenal can look boring at their best, because they're choosing when the game is allowed to be dangerous. Eze, on the other hand, is a tempo shifter. He sees a half gap and thinks, now. Not 2 passes later, not after we recycle, now. And that's why fans love him, because he can inject urgency into a match that's becoming sterile. But it's also why Arteta hesitates, because urgency can become turnover football if it's not timed. Fifth, structured pressing triggers. Arsenal's press under Arteta is not just run at them, it's coordinated. The press has triggers, a pass into a certain zone, a bad touch, a body shape facing the wrong way, and then Arsenal jump together. This is where Eze's fit gets debated most loudly, because pressing is about recognition, reaction, and repetition. Tactical analysis frames it bluntly. Arteta has struggled to strike a balance between control and creativity, and Eze has often been moved around as Arteta tries to find the role that gives him impact without breaking the team's balance. Here's the crucial point. Eze doesn't ruin control. He can be the shortcut to it, because there are matches where Arsenal's positional play works, but it becomes predictable. The opponent sits in a low block, blocks the half space, forces Arsenal wide, and says, cross it, we'll deal with it. That's when Eze becomes priceless. He gives Arsenal 3 things that change the nature of those games. First, a different kind of progression. Not pass to pass to pass, but receive, half turn, carry 10 yards, draw 2 men, release. That's not chaos, that's forced distortion. Second, a vertical final action. Eze is the player who sees the run early. The pass that's too risky becomes the pass that breaks the game, and it's why his cameo against Manchester City on September 21st, 2025 mattered so much. In Arsenal 1-1 Man City, Arsenal were running out of time, and Eze's pass created the stoppage time equaliser for Martinelli. That moment is the seed of the entire story. When the system reaches its limit, Eze can extend it. Third, the second number 10 effect. Even when he's not playing as a pure 10, Eze can behave like one in pockets, pulling a midfielder out, creating a lane for a runner, or dragging a fullback inside to free the wide man. And yes, sometimes Arteta uses others there, even shifting Saka centrally at times, which has come at Eze's expense. So we arrive at the tension. Eze is not being ignored because he's not good. He's being managed because Arteta's system is allergic to uncontrolled freedom. And yet, every time Arsenal need rhythm, not just possession, Eze seems to be the one who changes the temperature of the match. That's the paradox. Does Eze disrupt the structure or unlock it? Because if the answer is unlock, then this season isn't about whether he fits Arsenal. It's about whether Arsenal can win the biggest trophies without the thing he brings. The North London derbies were the moment the paradox stopped being a debate and became a case file. Because Eberechi Eze didn't just score in these games, he warped them. 2 league derbies, 2 demolitions. Arsenal 4-1 Spurs on November 23rd, 2025, then Spurs 1-4 Arsenal on February 22nd, 2026. And the headline numbers are already absurd. Hat-trick in the first meeting, brace in the reverse fixture, 5 goals across the 2 league derbies. That haul equalled a North London derby benchmark tied to Thierry Henry and Robin van Persie. But here's the important thing for our story. This wasn't Eze got hot. This was Eze versus a particular type of defending, and winning so hard it looked personal. Spurs' approach across these derbies leaned into aggressive pressure, often man-oriented, often trying to turn Arsenal's build-up into a fight, lock onto the midfield, pressure the first pass, force the ball wide, then jump. And Arteta's response was classic. Don't outrun, man-to-man outthink it. That's where ease becomes lethal, because man-oriented defending hates two things: players who receive on the half-turn and players who can change zones without the ball, drifting just enough to break marking reference points. Eze does both. In Arteta's positional system, players are supposed to hold zones until the moment the structure is stable enough to rotate. Eze is the guy who understands when that moment is, and he moves at exactly the time it hurts. Let's talk about why that hat-trick on November the 23rd, 2025 felt like a statement beyond goals. First, the match itself. 4-1, Arsenal dominant, and Eze was named the main character everywhere you looked. Match coverage gives us a key detail that screams system win. Spurs generated only 0.07 expected goals, the lowest by any side in a Premier League game that season. That matters because it tells you something. This wasn't a derby shootout. It was Arsenal pinning Spurs into a cage. So how does Eze become the executioner in a game like that? First, the half-space theft. Eze's first derby goal wasn't just finishing, it was how he got into the shot. When Arsenal build, they want to stretch you with width, then attack the inside lane when your fullback steps out. Eze lives in that channel, the left half-space pocket where the centre-back doesn't want to jump and the midfielder arrives half a second late. That is the zone where you can shoot across goal, slip the winger in behind, or bounce it into the 9. In a derby, when adrenaline makes defenders step out early, that pocket becomes gold. Eze doesn't just find it, he steals it. Second, the press resistance tax. When Spurs tried to press higher, Eze's touch killed it. Man-to-man pressing depends on the receiver taking a bad touch the moment the marker can jump and win the duel. Eze's best trait in these games was that he didn't give Spurs the trigger. One clean reception and suddenly the press isn't aggressive, it's broken. That's not a highlight moment, it's a suffocation moment. Third, the finish variety that breaks goalkeeping logic. Coverage described it as 3 outstanding finishes, and Arsenal framed it as a historic hat-trick performance. And that's the real fear. When a player scores in different ways, you can't solve him with a single adjustment. Mark tighter, he drifts. Show him outside, he curls it. Block the lane, he arrives later. So Derby 1 wasn't just Eze scored 3. It was Spurs never found a defensive answer that lasted more than 10 minutes. That November game did 2 important things for the Eze story. It created expectation. He's that guy. It created pressure on Arteta's selection. If he can do this in the derby, why isn't he starting every week? And then something quietly cruel happened. The season moved on, the games stacked up, and Eze's minutes didn't always stack with them. By February, the storyline around him was that he hadn't scored. Since that hat-trick, a drought that made the system-fit debate flare again. Which brings us to the second derby, the one that turned the conversation from nice derby moment into this is a repeating pattern. This isn't the same derby narrative. The stakes were heavier and the surroundings were uglier. Spurs were 16th, drifting toward a relegation fight. Arsenal needed a pressure release. They'd hit a patch where the title race felt tight and tense. There were bizarre stoppages due to officials' comms equipment issues, and Arsenal still kept control through the noise. And then Eze did the most ruthless thing a derby villain can do. He made it feel inevitable. Match coverage on February 22nd, 2026 gives the clean spine. As he scored twice, Gyökeres scored twice. Arsenal win 4-1. And here's the historical nugget. Match reports framed it as Arsenal's biggest league win at Tottenham since 1978. That's not just trivia, it's tone setting, because it says, this wasn't a normal derby win, it was a power gap. In the first derby, the hat-trick was the headline. In the second derby, the control was the headline, and Eze was the weapon inside it. Here's what stood out. First, Eze as a rhythm dictator, not just a finisher. Arsenal's best attacking days under Arteta often look like this. The ball moves quickly enough to shift the block, but slowly enough that Arsenal keep their rest defence stable and then one player decides when to stab. Eze in this derby played like the guy holding the knife and the timer. He wasn't forcing risky passes every possession, he was waiting for the moment Spurs' man orientation created a mismatch, then punishing it. Second, Spurs press, one man late and you're dead. This is the hidden cruelty of man-to-man pressing. It's not forgiving. If one player is a step late, the chain breaks. If one defender jumps too early, the backline is exposed. If the midfield gets dragged, the half space opens. Eze is basically built to exploit. That because he drifts into the who owns him zone, too high for a midfielder, too deep for a centre-back, too central for a full-back. That indecision creates the window, and in derbies, windows become goals. Third, Gyökeres synergy. Eze himself credited Gyökeres for putting him in better positions, and that matters tactically because it speaks to how Arsenal's front line functions. A striker who occupies both centre-backs, threatens the channel, and pins the line deeper creates more turn space for the half-space creator. That's where Eze becomes dangerous without needing to dribble through three men. So you can frame it like this. Eze isn't freelancing. He's operating inside a frontline ecosystem. Now we land the history book moment, but we land it with meaning. By scoring 5 league goals in 2 derbies, Eze matched a North London derby benchmark associated with Henry and Van Persie. The point isn't he's equal to those legends. The point is he's producing legendary-level derby output immediately while still being a player Arteta hasn't always started. That contradiction is the documentary fuel, because it forces the uncomfortable question, if the biggest games keep proving his value, why is his role still treated like an option? A hat-trick in November, a brace in February, historic company alongside Thierry Henry and Robin Van Persie in North London derby output, an equaliser-defining assist against Manchester City in September, Champions League minutes where transitions suddenly became sharp instead of safe. The real question is more uncomfortable. Is Arsenal more dangerous when they lean into Eze? Because Arteta's Arsenal, at their most disciplined, are a machine. The spacing is precise, the rest defence is secure, the tempo is managed, the opponent suffocates. But there are nights, especially against elite low blocks, when that control becomes repetition. The ball circulates, the zones are occupied, the shape is correct, and yet the game doesn't break. That's when Eze changes the equation. With him, Arsenal gain something they don't always manufacture through structure alone. Half-turn that commits 2 defenders, a disguised vertical pass, a dribble that fractures man-oriented pressure, a finish that arrives half a second earlier than expected. With him, the ceiling rises. Without him, the floor remains high, but sometimes the attack becomes predictable. Controlled, contained, and in a title race where margins are defined by 1 late assist, 1 half-space run, 1 derby swing, that difference matters. This isn't a call for chaos, it's a question of balance. Because if Arsenal want to win the biggest prizes, the debate may not be about whether Eze fits the system. It may be about whether the system is brave enough to fit him.